Parashat Toldot. In Parashat Toldot, we read a seminal story of how Jacob deceives his father, Isaac. And that deception will follow him through his entire life. Literally, it will haunt him and future generations. But much more to the point, because the story in Genesis does conclude with forgiveness on all sides. What is much more to the point of Parashat Toldot is the order of what happens. Chapter 25 sets the stage for the deception. Jacob actually purchases the birthright from his brother, Esau. Does he have the right to do it is a separate issue. It was his father's to dispense as he wishes. But there was a sale. And that sets the stage for the deception which occurs. That's chapter 26. The story of the deception and how it unravels continues in chapter 28. Chapter 27 is a total interruption in media res that seems to have absolutely no connection to what happens before or after. The major story of the deception, which, as I said, continues to literally haunt Jacob all of his life. And that story seems to have nothing to do with what happens previously or subsequently. And that's the relationship between Jacob and the king of the Philistines, Avimelech, the king of Gerar. Because Jacob had gone to live in the area of the Philistines, in Gerar, at a time of a famine. And his father, Abraham, had made a pact with Avimelech, the king of Gerar. And he finds that Avimelech's men had stopped up all of the wells that his father had dug. Now, wells were very precious. They were like oil mines today, because nothing could happen without water. Life could not live without water. And then Yitzchak, I'm sorry. Yes. And then Yitzchak, Isaac, redigs those wells. And he is assailed by the Philistines. And their terrible relationships. And he does not really succeed completely in gaining back the wells that they literally took away, stole from his father Abraham. And then a group comes. And they come to meet Yitzchak after they banish him from where he had been living in Gerar. And there too, Abraham achieved in his peace treaty with Avimelech previously, the right to live there. But no matter, Isaac is banished from there. And then Avimelech shows up with his friend Murray Achuzat and Fichol, the general of the army. And when Isaac says, what did you come to me for? You hate me, you banished me. They say, we want to make sure, because we see that God is with you, and we want to make another peace pact. Because after all, we didn't do any evil to you, even though we banished you, even though we stopped up your wells that your father made. We only did good by you because we allowed you to leave without harming you. We gave you the right to be banished alive. And Isaac makes the peace treaty. And then we return to the story of the deception. Now, what does this have to do with anything? Why is this story here at this point? And let me explain. The question which is never really asked, but which begs to be asked throughout the stories of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Why is it that Yitzchak, Isaac, prefers Esau over Jacob? Jacob is the wholehearted son, dweller in tents, the studious son who understood the tradition. Esau is very much like Ishmael and seems rather violent and certainly extremely superficial. Why is it that Isaac loves Esau and rejects Jacob? Which is what caused Jacob to try the deception. I believe the answer to that question is given in chapter 27, in the midst of the story of the deception. Because you see, the legacy from Father Abraham was the legacy of someone who was wholehearted and pure, who found God and taught the world about God. But there was a second aspect to Abraham. Abraham was a great military leader. Abraham understood that Judaism had to teach compassionate righteousness and moral justice, which is the antithesis of terrorism. That Judaism had to teach that terrorism was wrong and enslavement was wrong. And when there were 4 nations that became terrorist nations, that enslaved their people, Kedor Laomer, the major king, enslaves his people. And then, when there was a war, 5 kings against them, these 4 terrorist nations take innocent people captive. And Abraham himself, with 318 men, fights the 4 terrorist kings and wins. Abraham not only believes in compassionate righteousness and moral justice, he understands that the good must fight the evil. Jacob is wholehearted and studious, but he's not a fighter. He doesn't know how to stand up for his rights in Israel. He doesn't know how to stand up to the Philistines who stole. And therefore, he cannot be. So thinks Isaac, the leader of the next generation. That's the point of the order here. And Isaac chooses Esau over Jacob because he feels himself that he was a disappointment to his father. He wasn't able to fulfill the second part of the Abrahamic legacy. He couldn't fight against the evil. And therefore, he must give the legacy of the firstborn to the more aggressive son, to Esau. Shabbat Shalom.